Hello. Hi,
Hey,
Andrew.
hi Kate.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. First
Okay,
time,
so
so let's see. I'm on. Okay, good.
can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
And you
Okay.
can see me?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's good to be here. Before we carry on, I just need to apologise to anybody joining us. I am very snotty, and it's not COVID. It's just a cold. But apologies for the snots as we go through. But delighted to be here. So we've got just under an hour. We've still got people joining us, Andrew. So
Yeah.
for those who are starting to join us, just to say that obviously if you have some questions that you want to put in the comments in the chat as we go through, I will do my absolute best to thread them through into the conversation as we go through. If we do miss any, you can always send them to the team at the Big Draw to Andrew afterwards, but we'll try and do what we can in terms of threading them in as we go through. So, shall we crack on?
All right. That
So,
sounds like a plan.
so
Yeah.
we've made lots of notes. So if we could just maybe start with maybe a brief introduction, Andrew, just say a little bit about yourself, why you're here, why we're even talking, what it is that brings us together. And this Instagram live is a little bit different, just a little bit different from the ones that we normally do, in as much as we're also linking quite a few other shared partnerships that both Andrew and I are both connected with. But if I hand over to you, Andrew, if you want to say a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, we met in the forest, right, Kate? So
We
that
met
was
in the forest.
yeah, in the
That's very
forest
romantic.
in the city of Bath last summer, actually. I was at Tate Modern doing an installation for the studio where I work, and I just one day off, so I was heading over to Bath because I'd heard about the Forest of Imagination. I've been doing some play-based installations, and I met the one of the co-directors or the co-creators of Forest of Imagination, Penny Hay, in Aarhus, and I was invited. So when I was in London, I thought I better make it out there. And yeah, it was a beautiful day where I really was amazed to see so many people connecting with nature in these creative ways. And that's what we met that day. And yeah, I just knew
I think that
then.
was when I met you as well, wasn't it? For the first time, and it was really lovely weather. I remember.
Yeah,
Really
it was.
lovely the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I know that Penny is either already. Oh, there she is. She's already on the call. So I know
Yeah.
that Penny will be joining us as well from House of Imagination, Forest of Imagination.
Yeah.
So just to put a little bit more meat on the bones around how it's all linked together. So yes, we at the Big Draw we do an Instagram live pretty much every week these days with various artists, what I would really call creative change makers, I suppose, from different disciplines. The reason I would say this one's slightly different is because we're pulling together lots of different things that we're all involved with, and I would say that they're all sort of swirling around this climate change theme, sustainable
Right.
living, being more connected with nature, etc., etc. So I wanted to just read out, and I'm sure that TEDx will be very pleased to read it out. So I did have a look at the official TEDx Countdown copy earlier, and I'm just going to read it. It's only a sentence. So for those who don't know, TEDx Countdown is taking place this Saturday. Is it this Saturday? Yes, the 10th of the 10th. And it's a global initiative to champion and accelerate solutions to climate change crisis and turn ideas into action. I love that, ideas into action. It's also about building a better future by cutting greenhouse gas emissions. And it goes on, but basically it ends by saying safer, cleaner, fairer, better, more connected, etc. So as Andrew knows, TEDx Bath have taken up the mantle of that, and they are doing their own little precursor piece that will link in before the global event goes out on that day. So please do have a look at both the main TED Countdown website and also the TEDx Bath Countdown website, because we wanted to link in this as a preamble into that. We also wanted to link this into the Big Draw and the Virtual Forest House of Imagination, Forest of Imagination partnership that we've had over the last, 5 months, I think, with all the different artists. Because again, the themes they're interconnected. Our Big Draw Climate of Change, it's our 20th anniversary, Big Green Draw, and then thinking about the Forest of Imagination, and really keeping communities connected through creativity, co-curation, self-directed learning, all of those sorts of things. So you can see for the people on the call, it's really a lot of things are coalescing around that. And Andrew, do you want to just kick off, because you did an Instagram takeover last week, which I thought was fantastic, and I think threads together quite a few of these themes. So if I could hand over to you, and then we can get into the meat of the chat.
Yeah, sure. I had a look at what was offered from the other artists, which was quite great in how they're offering creative approaches that would bring people to nature and help connect. And thinking about the theme for the TEDx Bath and connectedness, I really wanted to find a way that I could try to reach out and make a simple invitation with the videos that I made to try something, just something that's playful. Go out and, for example, do a bit of nature tagging. So go outside, rearrange a bit of nature, leave something that is gonna, brighten somebody's day, and move on, take a picture. Also to try to connect with folks, and some of the younger, I don't know, maybe like the people who are, I saw a lot of children in the Forest of Imagination last year, and they're wonderful with their parents, but the kids that are just a little bit older, I just was wanting to remind them that nature's right there, and some of these, little fun ways to connect. And so that's what I was working on in that week.
I think they were very successful. I think it's fair to say. I love them all, but I did really like the one with a little winking tree, and I also liked the lady that you interviewed about the apple jelly jam. I thought that was very sweet. So that was basically, wasn't it, just go out talk to somebody who's over 80 and talk to them about something that you could learn from them, but I think particularly about what you could learn about being better connected with nature, more sustainable, growing your own vegetables, etc., etc.
A lot to do with that, but just, in general, just that, to connect to that, what I was thinking about with that one especially is that anybody who's lived 80 years has seen a lot, and I was thinking about where we are right now with, such an uncertain future with so many things that are hanging over our heads. I imagine, especially for young people that are coming up at this time, it's just, that perspective is so valuable. And so whatever the words of wisdom are, maybe it's just that connecting. You walk away from talking to somebody and actually listening to somebody. And I think everybody always just benefits from that. And, yeah, so I like that one especially. I've always loved old people. I grew up in lots of old people, so but they were my favorite.
Well, we're going to get onto all of that, as you know. It may be that there are people on the call who may be thinking, so why, apart from all of that, what's this got to do with drawing or visual literacy or mark making? So obviously, maybe for people who don't know what the Big Draw do on the call, we are a charity, we have a global presence. It's all about communicating visually, mark making, drawing, making a mark, but within a much bigger framework, so it doesn't have to just be traditional drawing. We absolutely embrace digital drawing and making marks across a variety of mediums and sectors. And please do have a look at our website for our various programs. But Andrew is also a drawer, a passionate drawer. And I wrote, when we chatted the other day, Andrew, I was making notes and I just pulled out a couple of things. There was one, if I may, I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about, and it was this idea. Well, number one, you draw every day. I think you said you draw at night, but you talked about drawing as a form of meditation. That very haptic, being that moment of the haptic and that hand to eye movement. But drawing as a meditation. I just wondered if you could talk a bit more about that and how it underpins your thinking and your wider practice.
Right. I think that, for me, when you can surprise yourself, that is a little bit of a wake up. You're like, oh, okay, there's something that this is coming out of me. So when I draw, it's usually the way that I like to do it is to, and this was one of the challenges as well, like whether I'm on the phone or it's right before I fall asleep and my brain is somewhere else and I'm not concentrating on what I'm doing with the drawing, but I'm just letting the muscle memory, the motion, having drawn my whole life, but not trying to draw anything, but letting that come out. And I really find that it lowers my heart rate. It brings me into a zone where I'm happy.
Do you actually feel it? Do you feel your heart rate sort of slow down? And
I do. It is in so many situations, like, and not right now, if like in our conversation, I could just start to draw as well right now. And it's just, it centers me. It brings me to a good place. So yeah, I like to especially draw right before I fall asleep. And of course I use it in many different ways, but mostly I use it for myself. I use it professionally in that I work out ideas, design ideas, or film ideas. So it's just a wonderful tool, but it's my relationship to drawing is quite personal. So it's a little bit more journaling in a way.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just rolling it back from there then, because we also, as we've done with all of the really amazing people I get the privilege of chatting to, we always like to at some point think about the wiggly way in to where people end up, and you know how you got into it all. And you have got a very interesting backstory, haven't you?
I think
So, I mean, you weren't one of these that, you know, went to art school, went to Camberwell, went to UEL, went to the Courtauld. You know, you didn't go down that on the slate. You didn't do that route. You had quite a different route. And so, I mean, it'd be good to talk more about sort of the family and the creativity within the family, but maybe thinking first of all about sort of more formal education frameworks. And so a couple of the things that I've jotted down here. So obviously Seattle. So talking about that, not going to art school, but I'm not wanting to do drawing at that age, perhaps formally, because you loved it so much and it was so sort of integral to your being that by doing it in a formal environment, as this is something I have to go and learn, it took away in some way the pleasure or the authenticity or the immediacy of it. And this is something we were talking a little bit about the other day. I mean, and obviously from there you've gone into lots of different areas in film and the storyboarding and everything else. It should be great to talk about. But can we talk a little bit more about that experience of being at school and the art teacher, the ceramic teacher that you talked about, etc.?
Yeah. Well, one of the first moment. I mean, there was always art in the home. My father was a painter. My mother was also a very good painter, and there was always the materials around the house. We were never, you know, told to draw or try to do this or that. It was just, it was there. And I think the first time I became aware of kind of the power of drawing, I mean, just personally for myself, was that I grew up, my father was a preacher and an artist, but so we moved around quite a lot. And so sometimes starting out a new school would be tough. And I remember at one school in Olympia, Washington, it was really a tough start. And I felt, you know, I probably lasted all but a couple of days that I had absolutely no friends. And I would go around the merry-go-round all by myself. And,
don't say that. That's so sad.
But I remember there was a moment where we were brought into the cafeteria and it was a drawing lesson. And the teacher put out an apple and said, all right, I want you to draw the apple. And so we all drew the apple. And then I put in a drop shadow and did a little shading. And then all of a sudden, you know, this teacher noticed something that I hadn't noticed or had never thought about. And then all of a sudden, there was this attention that I got for that, which lifted me out of that self-pity. Yeah. So yeah, it became a tool, you know, to also to integrate myself with other people and to
so almost using drawing as a way of helping you make new friends. Even you know, you go to the new school, you're the new boy, and what is it? You know, some people might tell jokes or be the fool, or some people might be sort of, I suppose, quite bossy or bullyish or something.
Right.
But for you, going in and you had this magic power, it's like a superpower of drawing, and it made people gravitate towards you. Yeah,
and so it was. Yeah, so it was always there. And then I think one of the more important, another important lesson that kind of came with art and drawing was in high school. I had a teacher. Her name was Lynn Sod, and this is up in Woodinville, Washington, up in the northern, up there. And I I loved being in her class, and of course, you know, I thought I was good, and so I would draw something, and I kind of had free reign to do whatever I wanted, and then she would come over and look at what I was doing and say, "Oh my goodness, it's amazing," and I felt so great. And then she'd go to the next person and be like, "Oh my goodness, that's amazing." So I saw that she did that with everybody. She was that kind of art teacher that made everybody feel like they were amazing. And so I don't know. I spent a lot of time in her room, and yeah. And I don't know. I just the connection to drawing. I think at that point I had to make a choice about what I wanted to do with continuing education, and so that was, you know, going on to university.
Yeah.
And that was a consideration, was to go to art school, and somehow I didn't want to have to do it. It was the thing that I loved. So
you didn't go to art school, but you did go and do drama.
yeah, at our high school we had the potential to. There was a very good theater program, and because I wasn't going to get a football scholarship, I joined the drama club, and through that I got a scholarship to go to university, and so that paid for my ticket out of town. So I went to Boston and studied at a conservatory program.
Yes.
Yeah. But I
carry on.
continued to draw there as well, and paint, and
That's right. So you mean you carried on, the drawing was just there consistently, but alongside everything else that you carried on doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting because what you were saying about, you know, growing up interesting family, your father, a bit of a showman, you know, that whole showmanship thing, needing to, and again, you can see that coming through going to school as a kid, and the showman coming through with the drawings. It's like, how can I make these people like me? How can, you know, how can I be charismatic? How can I make them be drawn towards me? I know I can use my skills at drawing. I think it's a really interesting one. But you did the drama, you did the theatre, and then you and your brother decided to go off traveling and become famous actors.
Yeah, well, it may be a little bit misguided, but yeah, there was an invitation from somebody at my university. She was from Mumbai, and she said, you know, if you went to India, you could become a very famous actor. And so I think that night I called up my brother who was in Texas. I said, Nathan, if we go to India,
time to go.
And we went, and my friend never answered we showed up in India, and they started calling this friend of mine, and I never, you know, nobody ever picked up, so we kind of had to figure out how to make it work there.
What to do next.
But what we realized is that we liked working together, and so we liked being together, and so I decided to leave Boston and not go to New York, and he left Texas, and then we went to Los Angeles together, and
collaborating. So at that time, collaborating around the storyboard, it was storytelling. I think storytelling seems to be a thread that runs through a lot of your work from when we were chatting. Storytelling in lots of different ways, but nevertheless, the need to want to tell a compelling story.
Yeah, I mean, that is. Also, I love boiling down stories, and I find that is also part of what makes a good drawing, or a good illustration, or a good, you know, spot of comic, you know. But my brother Nathan is an amazing artist, and he's a production designer for film, and he also ended up designing theme parks. I think that's what he's doing now, but he does the art department type things.
But you worked on films as well, didn't you? I had a little bird told me earlier. They just said to mention City of Angels.
Oh, okay.
Collaboration.
Oh yeah, well that's how I got to Berlin in the end. But yeah, Nathan, my brother Nathan and I, we did storyboards and films. We did worked on quite a few films, and then I went a different direction where I went into documentary filmmaking, which that really was, I don't know, my interest in people. That's what I've been doing for 20 years. But yeah, we were. How I got to Berlin was through Wings of Desire, the Wim Wenders film. Not that one, but he was making another film out in the West, and we were in Montana. My older brother, my younger brother, my sister, we all ended up in film somehow,
Ooh.
in Bender's film, and then I got
What, you all collaborated together on the same film?
yeah. I mean, Nathan,
Wow.
my brother, was doing the production design for this film with Sam Shepard, and then my younger brother was also part of the art department, and my sister came through, and actually she ended up in the film, but
That's pretty
I met a lot
incredible.
of nice Germans on that film that were enjoying our national parks and filming in Zion and all these beautiful places. But yeah, I had been in Los Angeles for a good chunk of time, and I don't know, had an invitation to come out and work for the Berlinale, and so I made a jump to Berlin. Yeah, from film, yeah, staying with film, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, just thinking, so just going through, sort of carrying on through that progression, I suppose, with your career. I know we've jumped around a bit, but in terms of where you are now, so your current role, I think it'd be great to hear a bit more. I know you probably wear lots of different hats, but in terms of your connection with the studio and all the other work that you're involved with as well.
Yeah, so with one foot always in film, though I've been wanting to branch out and figure and always learn something new, but particularly at this point in my life, I work some of the time. I'm part of the team, the production and development and production team at Studio Olafur Eliasson, and I was generally aware. I knew of Olafur. Living in Berlin and as you do, you know of Olafur.
Yeah.
It was because I ended up at the studio because I had been seeing posts. I'd done an art food project the year before, and I signed up on Instagram for the first time, and I saw all of these amazing food pictures for the first time in my life, and a lot of them were coming from this from the studio kitchen, and so I really found out about the studio through the food and
the food. That's such a good story. That's how you got in.
That's how no, it's not how I got it. I had to find a way in. Once I saw the food and I knew that I wanted to eat there, I had to figure out a way. And I mean, something came up, and I said, "All right, that's my ticket to a free. It is free. Yeah, you just have to work for it. Yeah."
And you're still there now, aren't you, as well? Still working there now.
Right.
Do you find that in your job there now and in your other work that you do, you're still leaning on drawing, you're still using drawing as a tool, and it's sort of coming up in different ways to help you with your visual communication or to help make the ideas make sense internally as a visualization tool?
Yeah, always. I mean, specifically for the studio, I'm not using my drawing there so much, though I do draw and I leave them everywhere, so they end up being on parts that you find them around the studio. But yeah, for my own design work, then yeah, when I have to work something out, I am using drawing to do that. Yeah, and there's one project that I'm doing with Forest of Imagination has to do with design, and of course I get to a certain point when it comes to my own abilities to draw, to make a realization of an idea, and then it has to go into a computer with somebody who really knows how to do this type of design work. So luckily that was such a nice. What's great about that Olafur Studio is it's not only is it the food, but it's the people, and there's really just a wonderful group of artists independently that are all working together, and yeah, so you find all the people you need to make your own ideas, which is great.
Yeah. Well, just picking up on some of the things you were just saying there about to what extent you're using your drawing. There, obviously, there's the whole narrative around analog and digital drawing and where they connect or don't connect, as the case may be, depending on your own personal opinion. Can we talk a bit more about that? Because I know that you do use both. How do you see them connect? But I mean, you do if you the drawing that you're doing at night time, the one that you're doing for meditation, presumably that's just analog or paper and pencil. Yeah. And then, but then other times, might you choose to do digital drawing? How does it work for you? What's your sort of go-to medium?
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, when I going digital, I mean, it's on the phone, just really a tiny bit,
Mm.
and doing a little bit of mixed media, just kind of copying and pasting and moving and doing a little bit of drawing there. I think pretty soon I've realized that I'm going to get myself a little iPad with a pen. I think that will be part of my
The
new,
way forward.
yeah, you know, not always finding scraps of paper around with a drawing that I like, but just letting the flow of
Yeah.
that go. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
It's funny because I've got these kittens. I don't know where they are now, but we've got these two kittens. We had to take them
Uh,
to the vet the other day for something, and we were in the vet, and the gentleman there had just had like blue paper napkins, and he was working out the dilution for something or other. And he started drawing all over the napkins, like doodling out the answer. I said, oh, I think you need a sketchbook or a notepad. And he did all those little drawings. And he says, oh, no, I never bother. I just do it straight onto the paper.
yeah.
Lovely. Just, you know, as part of just helping him work out the doses for the drugs done through little drawings and things.
Yeah.
It's really,
Yeah.
I actually think next time I've got to take the cats back. I think I might have to talk to him a bit more about that. But, you know, but, okay. We talked about lots of other things. There was a few things that I know that you and I are both quite passionate about in terms of an approach to creative learning. And I think these are things also that are embedded certainly at the Big Draw and certainly at the Forest of Imagination, where I also wear a hat as a trustee. And that's really this role of, it's the role of play and playfulness and how that fits within learning, really, pedagogy. So we did do, I think it was about 2 years ago now, the Big Draw. We did our whole theme for the year. We just called it play. And it was this idea of encouraging people to think about play, not just for children, but for everybody, play for everybody, but as a tool for, yes, of course it can be fun, but also as a tool for happy experiments and happy mistakes, ending up somewhere where you never imagined that you would, and actually it turns out to be probably better than if you had initially envisaged. So that role of exploration, innovation, thinking, and I think also being allowed to fail, and this whole thing about being given permission. It's a bit like being given permission to draw, which is something we hear all the team will tell you at the Big Draw every single day. Oh, I can't draw. It's like, oh, it doesn't have to be a pretty drawing. That's not what we're about. But there's that whole trope around all of that, isn't there? So it would be good to hear more, because I mean, I think that you share in terms of play and playfulness, how, you know, your thinking around all of that.
Yeah, I mean, well, just really quickly on the idea of I can't draw. I
No,
mean,
it's just, isn't it? It's relentless, honestly. If
no,
we had £1 for every time somebody said I can't draw at the Big Draw, we would never need to worry again.
yeah, right. I don't know. I mean, I think, people who draw sometimes, I mean, you get, let's say, I may still be drawing because somebody noticed it at one point, the right person, and said, oh, that's very nice. And that was enough encouragement to keep going. And then at some point, somebody might call it talent, and which I think is like, in raising my own kids, I'm starting to think about this as well. It's like, it's really just doing it. It's really just hard work. And there's sometimes I would trade, like how I draw. I would love to draw like somebody who can't draw, you know? I mean, because I think what they can do without any of the training and without any of the sort of
baggage that goes with it. I
you know,
think sometimes when you see people who say they can't draw, or they've had, or maybe it is, it was children as well as adults. It's almost that's that simplicity of line, and almost less is more. When somebody just sort of, the best of artists do it. They just sort of go, and you're like, oh my god, and they've just captured the essence of it, rather than somebody else who might be a reasonably good drawer or draftsman. I mean, you sketch, I sketch, I draw, but I would be like painstakingly like, oh, have I got that? And it would be really rubbish. And I say rubbish, I'm not allowed to say that either, am I? It wouldn't be what I'd be going for. I wouldn't have been capturing the essence of it, because sometimes that simplicity of the line is what captures it, doesn't it? And it's hard to get that, I think. Sometimes people get that when they are less experienced.
Yeah, untrain yourself a lot.
Yeah.
But to your question about play, that's
yes.
yeah, part of the work that I've been doing in Berlin, I've been co-creating with another artist here in Berlin named Benjamin Martin, and together we have this something we call playful nature, and we've been doing these experiments in play where we make a simple invitation, and usually it's under the guise of, you know, bring your kids, but the simple invitation is, let's say the first one we did was we just took the back wall of the gallery, covered it in, you know, three-dimensional cardboard boxes, painted a big bullseye on it, threw a bunch of sticks on the ground, put a bunch of really sharp knives, and then just invited kids. And we stood back and we just wanted to see what would happen. I mean, make your own. This was, you know, William Don't Tell, you know, like kids came in, and it was just magic to watch, you know, that level of like, okay, also it's not safe play either. It's a little bit of the potential chaos and all of that. Then, yeah, but you know what it is? It's play is also this idea of tinkering. So it's, you know, yes, you fail, you know, and there's so much is encapsulated in this one. I shot this little film of that day with this bow and arrow workshop, and you can find it on my website, which is just myname.com. But there's just a moment okay, so what you see is everybody working and trying to figure it out, and parents helping, you know, the kids use the knife safely. And you see a couple really determined kids that are trying to figure it out. You know, the string's not tight enough, or the arrow's too wonky and it doesn't shoot straight. And then you see the ones that get determined, and it's this playful concentration that it's, you know, if you think about tinkering, it's like, okay, it's not failing. You're just trying something that doesn't work. Okay, try it again. That doesn't work. That, you know, it's not like you try this big thing and then you fail and you're a loser. You just keep on trying. So, and there's a moment where this boy, I mean, first of all, the person who hit the bullseye first was a girl, and she had a shot. She didn't even care she hit the bullseye. But you see this boy who's, you know, so determined, and finally he hits it, and you see this moment where he turns into the camera to look to see who's looking. He's like, and it's just the best moment, you know. And, you know, I think that's what, you know, I don't know, that there's that point where you sort of discover something, you learn something, we all know so much about physics that we actually get taught out of us, you know. So education, yeah, I think I'm inspired by some of the work that I see being done in, like, the city of Bath with Forest and House of Imagination, the Big Draw. Are you in Bath? No.
We're not based, no, the Big Draw. We have our office in London, but it is just an office.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a very nice office, and they're lovely there, but it's because we're working all over the place.
Yeah. Well, but just the fact that, you know, you're part of a trustee of the Forest of Imagination, and that you're bringing these different groups together all along with, you know, TEDx and TED Countdown. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think the main focus is education going forward, you know, and being able to inspire and use creativity, because, yeah, I mean, with an uncertain future, I mean, why are we still learning things the way we've always learned them? You know, why are we still ticking the boxes for, I have to know this, I have to know that, and it's just like, no, you have to know how.
It's very linear, isn't it? It's very road. I've noticed. I haven't been ignoring the. Penny's just said, I'm trying to persuade Kate to move to Bath.
Let's all move to Bath.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
We've got a very small house here, but yeah, who knows? But Penny's been writing quite a lot of nice little quotes and things, and this idea she's written that play is a child's work, which I think it really nicely does encapsulate some of the things that we've been talking about. You know, this idea. I think she also said, you know, learning about experiments in play. And yes, to your point, Andrew. Yes, I mean, I could just go on a big old rant about what's happening in the education, creative learning sector, and I know that this session isn't for that. So, but it's a mess, isn't it? It's a mess. And I mean, if we start to think about what this so-called recovery curriculum could look like, or what it should look like, etc., it's, you know, we could be embedding a lot more around learning about biodiversity and climate change, but we could also be putting in a lot more about Black Lives Matter and everything else. I mean, there's such an opportunity there which isn't personally I don't think is really being grasped at the moment. But yes, I mean, if you were to, I mean, these are some of the questions that we were talking about, me and Penny were talking about with the TEDx team the other day. If you were reimagining what a future learning would look like, what would you be suggesting in light of some of these things that we've talked around, you know, around climate change, sustainable living, people being, this idea that it feels to me like humans have forgotten that they are part of nature. It really feels like that. It feels like they've just forgotten that they're not. It's almost like in some way they're just literally disconnected. That they don't have anything to do with it. Everything else is they know everything else is connected. They know that the ecosystems and the birds and the bees and the wasps and the moths and all the rest of it. But somehow there's like a block, isn't there? There's like a big block. It's like in some way that they're not connected, and that needs to come back together. And it does start with education and the kids and the next generation. Is my personal opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think.
Penny's just said, please rant, Kate.
Yeah, no.
I better not, Penny, because I'm so dosed up on all these cold things. I'll just go off on one.
Yeah.
I'll start getting into trouble, you know. So I'm trying to rein myself in a bit. I'm probably peaking already on ibuprofen and paracetamol and cocoa. So I behave myself.
I appreciate that you're giving, you know, that you've
oh
made...
no, I'm just saying to Penny, I better rein myself in, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, Andrew. What would you imagine it to be? How would you, if you had a free rein, what would the big change be for you that you could make in the curriculum?
Yeah, I mean, I love this concept of in Germany they call them Waldschule, you know, or like schools that are in the woods, you know, and I think that idea is all over.
Like forest schools, yeah.
Yeah, schools, yeah. I think that I love that idea for, you know, for the start. I think it's a great way to start, and I would just feel very fortunate. I grew up in some beautiful nature, you know, the Northwest United States with old growth forests. I grew up in this thick, dense undergrowth and these huge trees, and so I'm far away from that now in Berlin, and I really miss it. I mean, that is, but that connection never leaves you, and I think that, I think everybody has a connection to nature, whether they think it's, you know, a big one or it's, but I think everybody has loved a tree in their life, and I think that stewardship is an important part of education, that being responsible for nature, of course on the bigger scheme, but we all have to think about individually, and maybe, you know, the kids that are responsible for this little tree, this little plant. I'm going to take care of this, and then and fostering our relationship to nature. Yeah, so that's the nature part, and then I think, unfortunately, everybody has to squeeze through a narrow, when it comes to education, this narrow pathway, or this gate, and I don't think it's necessary anymore. I think that everybody has something that they're really good at, and we have to find a way to.
I'm just reading one of the. Sorry to interrupt you, Andrew. So Willie's just written. So Willie's the architect sketchbook. Andrew, I am a mountain bike leader, and I teach kids when we're out in the wilds. So actually, Willie's just done a fantastic blog pieces with us recently. So do all have a look at that if you get a chance. But yes, he's been actually teaching drawing out in nature,
drawing
back to on his bike, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have got a few more things I'd quite like to thread out if we have time. I mind for the time. So where are we? We're 11 minutes past. If I go on for too long, we won't be able to record it, but we're okay for about another 15 minutes, I think, at the most. Okay. Is there anybody that would like to ask any questions? Well, you have, Andrew. Anybody have anything that's come through on the feed that I may have missed? Because it does go quite quickly, and I'm probably not firing on all cylinders. The snots. So if anybody is there anything that anybody'd like to put to Andrew directly? If there's not, I've got loads more questions, but just give everyone the opportunity.
Oh, open it up. But yeah, I mean, I can't multitask so well, so I see things that are floating up on the screen.
I know it's not always easy to. I mean, I noticed there's been a few. I think there've been more comments. There've been more. Yeah. I think people chiming in about their agreement in terms of education. some of the issues that we've touched on. I mean, another thing I was going to bring up was, I know this is something that's very close to the heart of House of Imagination and Forest of Imagination, and I think we talked about it maybe that very first time that we met. But it's this idea of, well, I mean, it's crucial to the House of Imagination. This idea of learning not being something that is sort of imposed upon the children. So it's much more about co-learning. So co-learning with their peers, co-learning with their teachers, self-led learning, sort of self-directed learning, being able to explore and experiment and find out, and not this sense that it isn't all sort of imbued from high from the teacher. And not to say that the teacher can't facilitate that and encourage discussion or exploration in certain directions, but it's more of a two-way thing. So yeah, co-curation, co-learning, it's much more collaborative.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, I think
you have another question for you from Russell, but if you're right to answer that one first.
Yeah, that idea of co-creation, co-direction, coming together, that's ideal. And I think that the way that I'm, I at some point I did some survey that told me that I was an audio learner, an audio
learner.
Yeah. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense because I draw, I'm visual, But I think in the end, it's probably true that I think if you have a question or you want to learn something, go out and ask somebody who knows. I mean, I think that's also a great way, and then you make these connections and it benefits the person who's imparting the knowledge as much as it is the person who's asking for themselves, and I think that if we could create more situations like that, where, I always, with my own kids, I'm like, you want to know how to do it? Well, there's somebody who knows how to do that, so go ask them. And that's also, just thinking about that just made me think of Olafur Eliasson, where I work at the studio. He's at some point, you have ideas, you want to do things, but let's say you don't know how these microbial, formations work, but there is somebody. So they're not being afraid of not knowing and just going out there because, and people who...
you look everything up these days. We didn't have any of that when we...
Right. Yeah, but I still think you should go out and ask somebody.
It's different from looking up on Google, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting one because as you know, I've got two smallish girls. They're 9 and 10. And one of the things that is my constant frustration with them, and I see it reflected in their friends and their peers. And I think it is maybe it's coming from, who knows, the parents. Blame the parents, but I think it's coming from the education sector. They are so focused on getting the answers right. It's all about, get the answer right. What's it going to be? And all the bit about getting there in the middle almost loses its importance. So I'm constantly having these battles with particularly my oldest girl, where she's like, oh, well, this is the answer. And I'm like, well, how did you get there? She's like, oh, it doesn't matter. This is the answer. I was like, no, I don't even care if the answer's right or wrong. I want to know how you got there. I want to know what the process was. I want you to unpick the stages of the learning. How did you get there? What was it you learned about that along? That's what's is interesting. I think that's what's at risk of being lost within what's happening out there at the moment. It's bringing about that confidence and that ability to be able to fail and to feel confident about failing and being able to try again and not just giving up. Because again, that feels to me like maybe our generation was maybe a little bit more resilient. It's not quite so, feels a bit more brittle now. It's like, oh, I got it wrong, I'm never doing it again. So it feels a little bit more like that from my personal experiences. We had a question from Russell.
Kate, lean down for a second. If you lean down, it looks like your hair becomes my hair.
Look, we can blend. Apart from I've got massive bags under my eyes from flops.
I saw a question from Russell that I
so Russell's was, how do you know when you produced a good drawing? Now, I don't know whether Russell was giving you a trick question or not, and whether he knows that maybe there isn't such a thing as a good drawing, or maybe he thinks there is a good drawing. I don't know. So over to you.
For myself, if it looks like a drawing I didn't draw, then I know it's good.
Russell, did you want to come back on that?
No? That's what I mean by surprise when it comes to drawing. Like when I fall asleep at night and I'm drawing, sometimes I'll wake up or a week later I'll see a drawing that I really like, and successful drawing for myself because it's just different. It's just surprisingly different from what I always do. Yeah.
Mm. Russell just said, would I do a thing like that? Don't know, would you, Russell?
I don't know, Russell. It's yeah, that's just personal. I mean, I think if you have a certain, it depends on your approach. If you have a technical approach, you might be able to look at a drawing and be like, that is technically perfect. I'm very happy that's a successful drawing. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? I think it's difficult because it means so many different things to different people.
Yeah.
I think if it's successful for you, it's a successful drawing.
Yeah.
It might be that it's not even to be shown to anybody else. It could be just for you. I think a lot of it's totally for you. The sketches, it's a private sketch. It's all about it's a doodle to help you unravel maybe something that's bothering you or you've been thinking about, or and it might be a squiggle. I squiggle, I doodle constantly. People wouldn't make sense of my doodles. They might do. There are some drawings in there as well. But it's a process of working out how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. Is it successful? It would look like nothing externally, but it's successful to me because it helped me get from A to B.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it is, for me, it's also a processing of what's going on. The same way the subconscious mind is dealing with everything you're going through, and it sorts it out in these dreams, and the brain is like, yeah, it's refreshing, it's doing these things. So I also feel like the drawing is a way to just to, process emotions, process things that are not intentionally or not consciously. And so sometimes I'll see a drawing, and I think my grandmother at one point, she was a beautiful lady that lived to be 94, always so healthy and had younger friends and so full of life. And at one point she looked at my drawings and she was like, "Oh, but they all look so sad." They were like, "Oh, it's sad." Not all the drawings, but they're kind of sad characters or moping or something. And that's not who I am, but somehow it's like it's part of me that comes out in drawings, which is also, I'm fine with that.
I think it's always weird though, looking back at your drawings when you were a lot younger. I mean, we were clearing out the attic at my mother's house about a year ago or so, or she was clearing the attic up in North Yorkshire, and she found a lot of my sort of A-level stuff, GCSE and A-level art stuff, and it was quite nice looking at it. It was also quite disturbing because there was an awful lot of very dark stuff, very sort of angst, a lot of surrealist stuff. There was a lot of daggers. There was a lot of like dismembered bodies and
what
horrible. I was thinking, oh, did I do that? Nice, was it? But yeah, it's funny what you go back to. So there, that whole I can't draw trope. I think we're probably all on the same page. I think with that.
Yeah.
There's another one from Willie. So what is the first drawing that you can remember? Yeah, that's a good question.
Well,
I suppose that could be a drawing that either you've done or that you've maybe been at an exhibition or an art gallery thing, and it's had an impact on you, and you've really remembered it.
That's a really good question. That would take some. And the first thing that came to mind is probably a photograph of, an early, like I think I did a painting when I was 5 that ended up being bought by a Japanese family that came to our little antique store that my parents had. And I think I got money for it, and they took my picture with this family. So that's one of the first memories of but I think it would be more interesting to spend time to find the answer to that and think of what the drawing that's just, that's there, that the first drawing I saw.
I can remember, for me, it was, I had a book, and it had some of the Leonardo drawings in it. Leonardo da Vinci drawings in it, and also I had a puzzle, because that was when we used to do puzzles before the iPad came along and read books, and it was one of those pre-Raphaelite puzzles, and it was the Lady of Shalott.
Yeah.
The one of it wasn't. It was Ophelia. There was Ophelia dying on the water going down the lake. I remember thinking, oh gosh, I want to be her. And I don't know what's going on in my head at that age. I was probably about 7. And I got into sort of the pre-Raphaelites by about 10. And then it went from there, sort of disown them, because I found that they were actually sort of a bit mawkish and a bit all the rest of it. And then probably rediscovered them when I was about 14 or 15, but from more of a art history, contextual, you know, sort of context, and came back in that way, and the drawings coming back in that way. And that's how I then I got into William Morris and John Ruskin, and how drawing and art linked with environmental issues and economic issues and socio-political issues and all of those things that happened at the time, particularly around Morris and John Ruskin. And in fact, that's what I ended up doing. That was my whole MA, actually. And then from there, I ended up going and got more involved with all of that. So apart from being the director of the Big Draw and the trustee of the Forest, I'm also a companion of the Guild of St George. So the Guild of St George, yeah. So founded by John Ruskin in 1871, by himself, still going, and it really champions a lot of the things that we've been talking about. He was the first person to document, many people would say document, climate change through the changing ice fields, and you know, through drawings and through photographs, but through a lot of drawings actually as well. Yeah. So it all sort of interconnects, doesn't it? It swirls together and influences you about where we all end up in our life, I think. So other questions that I had, I suppose my last question, let me just have a look at the time. Yeah. My last question or series of questions might be more around if you were, I suppose if you were going back, if you had the opportunity to go back and start again, would you have any advice that you would want to give to your younger self, or would you have any advice to give to anybody who, not necessarily here, watching live now, but this will obviously go immediately onto our Instagram account and is likely to get lots of views and be used as a resource. We'll also be putting it onto YouTube. So would you have any tips or advice that you would be up for sharing? So maybe younger kids looking to get into a certain career, or maybe more personal tips, you know, about being resilient. I
think whenever I think of career, you know, whether it's, you know, working in film or any of the creative, I don't want to call them industries, but they are, I don't know. I think that it's about investing time in people, you know, so, and I think that's what I learned fairly early on, and you help people, and I mean, that's karma, all that. It's, invest time in people, and you learn in that process. That's what I've done, and that's a good way forward for career. And I think for yourself, I think that the no's are equally important to the yeses that you make. And I've been, you know, I think that has been very important for me, is to say no to certain things, you know, certain jobs, certain ways, and then also, I think the last thing is just, and maybe, I don't know when you sort of realize this, but being able to trust yourself, and being able to trust that you know something, and your body will actually tell you, that your gut will.
I think that's such a strong thing for me as well. I mean, you know, you were talking about, you know, the tests that you do, and you can find out where you're supposed to have aptitudes in certain things and all the rest of it. I mean, I've done those quite recently as well, and they always come out the same. They're quite interesting, aren't they? So I come out very, very high, not surprisingly, on visual and strategy. But I think there's obviously something there about empathy as well. I think that's really important with all of the things that we've been talking about today, and your gut instinct. And it's exactly what you were just saying. Experience goes such a long way, but it's also, you do sometimes, or quite often, I think, have to just make a decision and go on the gut instinct of what you're getting off that other individual or that other partnership or whatever it might be. And it's about the pitters, it's about the people. You know, do you like them? Do you trust them? Can you work with them? Are you on the same page? What does your gut instinct say? Do you know, trust?
Right.
It's all about trust and collaboration. It is so important.
Right. And I think we talked about this one time before, is that you only have so much time. So, you know, of course, you'd have to invest, spend time with the right people. You know, the people that you can, you know, they're very valuable. The people that you can communicate with, and they can understand you, and you can empathize with, and they get you, you know, just be on the lookout for those people, because, you know.
And any of that are just not feeding, or just taking loads of energy, you just need to ditch.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing. Yeah. If you can't.
Get rid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally. Hack it off if it's not working for you. So
Yeah.
I think we're nearly there. Yeah, we're going to have to go, or I'm going to get into trouble with my team for not saving it properly. So,
Okay.
was there anything else that you wanted to say? I know there's so Penny saying trust, respect, collaboration, kindness, empathy, and then collaboration is a good way forward. Yeah, I think everyone's on the same page. I mean, if there's things that we've missed or that I've missed to thread out as key questions for Andrew, I do apologise. Please send them to me, and
yeah.
I will put them to Andrew, and I will make him answer them, and then I will feed them back to you all. Or maybe Andrew will just do another one of these in a couple of months' time.
All right, that sounds great. Well, yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
No, it's so lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much, Andrew. And I guess apologies again for the snot fest.
Yeah, hopefully.
If only I had some whiskey, but sadly I don't. Anyway, there we go.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Take care.